welcome to episode 80 of the Craft House Magic podcast. My name's Ellie and I'm coming to you from Norwich in Norfolk in the UK, and today is the 22nd of August. So welcome everybody. Hope you've all had a lovely crafty week. I'm here to share what I've been making in the last 7 days since the last podcast. So you can find me on Instagram, Ravelry and Facebook as Craft House Magic, and I have my own website, crafthousemagicc.co.uk, where you can find my online shop which sells my project bags, hand-dyed yarn and stitch markers, etc. And also you can find the show notes on there. So if you go to the menu and click blog and show notes, that'll take you to all the show notes from all the episodes. So thank you so much to everybody who purchased my pattern collection, or one of the patterns from my pattern collection, which was the Country Garden set, which was a beret, cowl and mittens. I'm really excited to see that people are started to knit things already, so that's very exciting. So today I have some knitting, some crochet, some sort of quilting, some printing and some information on my shop update, which is every Friday at 7 o'clock. So let's get into the good stuff. So we'll start with the knitting first, as always, and I finished a pair of socks. So this was the lovely yarn that Lorraine had dyed up for me, and it's in the colours of Fibre East there. Again, the pink isn't as bright as it is in real life. I think it really works well with the yellow, with it being nice and bright. They are knitted in, basically I've used 64 stitches on 2.5mm needles. I've done them cuff down, but I ended up knitting a tube, then knitting the toe and then going back and doing an afterthought heel. So it's a sort of combination between my simple top down sock and my method of how I split a sock tube into 4 pairs, but it's only one pair this time. So I had 50 grams of the stripy, and I basically knitted till I'd got about 25 grams left, added the toe, and then I included the heel there. So that's worked out quite a nice length of sock. Of course, if you're fussy about how long you want it, you can sort of measure length of your foot minus 3.5 inches for this bit of stripy length you need, and then however long you want this sock up here. So I'm pleased with how those have come out. So I'm going to save those till Fibre East next year, so that I can wear them to, hopefully Lorraine will be there so I can show them finished. So there we go, finished object. I have some whips. Actually, I've only got one knitting whip at the moment. I haven't had so much knitting time this week. How terrible! I've had lots of social knitting time, so hence the plain socks that I've been knitting. So I'd nearly finished the tube that I'd got of this Bergère de France that I was knitting with, and it's that's the label, and it's the Imprim Joan colourway. And I'd knitted a tube from this, so I then split it into two, because a 50 gram ball's good for 2 socks. And I've added the toes in there, and I've done the heel, afterthought heel on the first one, and then I'm in the process of doing the afterthought heel on the second one. Oh, and I forgot to say, I've also done a little cuff. I decided to do a little tiny cuff for some reason, just to see how it'd look. I'm not sure if I like it that short really, but it's good to experiment sometimes. So almost a finished pair of socks. That's all the knitting, I'm afraid. I really didn't have much time to knit this week. I'm going to make sure I've got more time to knit next week, so I can get some really fun projects on the needle. So next is crochet. So I've been working on my corner to corner crochet blanket. I've only done a few rows there, but they do take quite a long time because they're getting a bit long now. So I'm going to go out as wide as I want it and then start making it in a rectangular shape. I love the texture of this blanket. I'm not quite sure whether you can really see on camera, but it's such a nice texture. It's quite a sort of stiff material compared to my Cozy Memories blanket, but that sort of holds its shape better, I think. So I've been holding my yarn double, 2 4-ply yarns. I've been using my undyed merino nylon base with a ball I've made up all my scraps, so a magic ball of all my scraps. I do have a tutorial on how I tie my magic knots to make the ball up. and I will leave a link in the show notes. But I've now run out of the multicoloured ball, so I'm just going to wait till I've got quite a few scraps left from minis from my Cozy Memories and other projects, and then tie those together into a magic knot again. So this is going to be quite a long-winded project, I think, but that uses up all my little tiny scraps, so anything that's sort of more than this big, I'm tying it in using magic knot. So I think it was last week I said that I'd bought some new crochet hooks. So the one I was using before, which I don't know what I've done with now, is it was a blue crochet hook, but it was just metal and it didn't have any cushioning, and I was having problems with my thumb aching quite a bit, so I've been alternating these two to see which I like best. To be honest, both of these are much better than the ones that don't have any squishy padding at all. So this one is the Knit Pro Waves in a 4mm, and this one is a Clover and More hook in a 4mm as well. I do actually prefer this one, the Clover and More hook, because of the shape around the needle. It allows you to, there's sort of a space to put one thumb there and 2 fingers on the other side, so like as if it's specially made for you to hold it like that. Whereas the Waves one is just a smoother, bulbous sort of handle. To be honest, they're both really good, but I do slightly prefer this one. I think as well, the Knit Pro Waves, the very end of the crochet hook is a bit more bulbous as well. I'm using the word bulbous a lot today than this one. And I found that Clover and More hook slightly quicker to crochet with. So there we go, mini needle review there. I mean, everyone was telling me the Amore ones were better, to be honest. So I'm just agreeing with everyone else, really. So that's my crochet section. We now have some sort of quilting. It is quilting, but it's not a quilt, if that makes sense. So I picked up Lou Lee's Notion pouch pattern absolutely ages ago, and I finally made one. So I made it out of some canvas that I had in my stash, and I did actually change the pattern very slightly in that instead of interfacing I used some wadding in there instead. And then I did some quilting, some free motion quilting. I'm not quite sure whether you'll be able to see on there, but there's some vermicelli sort of random swirly quilting all over the base there. And this is how it works. You can see that I've put my stitch markers I got last week in there ready to use. So it's a really handy pouch that opens out really wide so that you can see what you've got in there. I'm really pleased with this, and I definitely recommend Lou Lee's pattern. It's very well written, tells you everything you need to know. And I actually changed it a bit in that I put press studs either side instead of one in the centre, so I think it gives you the choice to use different sort of attachments, but I'd got lots of these plastic press studs, so I used those out of my stash. So I'm loving this, so definitely recommend Lou Lee's pattern. I will leave a link to it in the show notes. And secondly, I also have another quilty thing. It's a little pod thing. Actually, they're called bubble pods. So I picked this pattern up from the quilt show, and I had to do it as quickly as possible. So I think I've had it 2 weeks. Very good that I've used it already. I want to make more of these. They are brilliant. So I wanted to make a little thread catcher that would sort of sit on the surface but also looks really cute as well. So I made this up. I think I probably made the handle very slightly longer than they have in the picture. I changed it slightly just so that I could hang it up on my little, I've got IKEA bar at the back of my desk here, so I can hook it onto there, but also it can sit on my desk as well. So I've been putting that to the left of my sewing machine to throw bits of thread in and bits of scrappy fabric, but I've also got another thread catcher which is at the other side here, so I've got 2 places to put thread so that I don't actually throw it on the floor. So this is how it looks all the way around. I love this pattern, it's so cute. So you basically layered up 3 layers of fabric and did some different quilting on there. This is the type of quilting that it recommended. But you could do all sorts of quilting really. I'm definitely going to make more of those. I think it'd be nice to have a little row on the side with little bits and bobs in. I'm thinking one for zips to go in. Definitely make a few of those. Although they did take a little bit of time because there is some hand sewing in it. So you do end up having to hand sew some of the binding when you've attached it using the machine. But I don't mind a bit of hand sewing. Right, so we've got, and the next section is printing. Now I don't have much printing on the podcast, but I've been messing around with my jelly plate. So I'll show you the actual jelly plate first. In fact, this is just the packet really, but this is the jelly plate that I purchased something like 2 years ago from one of the shows, either the quilt show or the knitting and stitching show. And I've been wanting to use this for sort of a transfer printing technique for ages. You can see how you roll the paint onto the jelly plate. It's basically, let me get it out so you can see. It's a piece of gel that you basically roll on your paint onto, and then you can do some different sort of transfer techniques and making different patterns into the paint itself on there. So you basically roll the paint onto the gel plate and then you can make different textures on there and then you print it onto a piece of fabric. So I started out doing just some textured prints. Not quite sure how well you can see that. Some textured prints using some little plastic tools that I'd got in my stash and I used a couple of different colours there. Just to sort of all over effects really. I had some shiny metallic paints there, so they were quite good. So the makes that I was using was the Jacquard textile colour and the Lumiere metallic paints. They're like acrylic I think, so they need to be ironed on afterwards. And I had some templates that I was using on there, just messing around, so I can cut little bits out of this in the hopes of doing some textile art with them at some point. But you can also do leaf printing on there. So I've got some leaves after we'd been on a walk in Sheringham, and I did the first print is like a shadow print of the leaves, and this is some ferns. So you'd put the leaves onto the gel plate once you've coated it with paint, then take a print and it'll take a shadow print like this. Then I removed the leaves and then you have something that might look like this. So this is the fern print that I did. So these are from the same leaves that you can see. And then I did some other leaves as well, and this is my favourite one. It's where the leaves have been removed and there's still paint underneath, so that then can be transferred onto the fabric. So hopefully I'm thinking about doing some bags, some project bags that are printed like this. I was even thinking of doing it on different coloured fabrics actually, because I think that would work really nice in combination with not just white fabric. There we go. These you just need to press with an iron after you've printed them and let them dry, and then they should be washable. So I will test out whether those are washable, and then I might think about doing some notions pouches or some bags for the shop with those, but definitely some textile wall art I think. So that's all my sort of crafty stuff for this week. It seems a bit low on the ground this time. We've had lots of visitors, so I've done lots of just sort of plain knitting really. We had Helen from Flora Honeypot and her husband Dave came round on Sunday, and we had a nice cup of tea and a chat with them. If I remember, I'll pop a picture up here. She does lots of crochet if you're interested in looking at her Instagram page, but she also does the podcast sometimes with Caroline Loves to Sew, and they are such a brilliant pair when they get together on the podcast. Shop update this week. I have some more mini sets. So I have these that go together nicely I think. So this is Cloud Busting. I have some Bed of Roses. This one is Saving All My Love for You, which that's the one I knitted my cowl and hat in. but obviously in DK. And this one is Sweet Dreams. So there we go. Those 4 will be together as a little mini set on the shop on Friday at 7 o'clock. And there is actually one set left that I dyed last week that I showed on the podcast. There's one of these left in the shop if you're interested in. And I won't be able to do this one again because I didn't write the recipe down. So if you want that last set, don't forget to pop to the shop. That one is on the shop already. These 4 that I showed you first, they'll be in the update. It's a small update this week because next week is going to be a big one, which will include some Christmas colourways, 2 new Christmas colourways, some advent calendars and also some tote bags. So I'm excited to finally release those. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more, and I shall see you in the next episode. Bye!